Hey folks, Andi here, thanks for joining me. Right, time to take a look at setting up the intonation on this Les Paul. Now, intonation is all about tuning, and when you think about what happens when you play guitar, you've got strings going over the nut down here, you've got a bridge down at this end, got a bridge down at this end, and you've got a bunch of frets in the middle. The nut's in a fixed position, the frets are in a fixed position, and the bridge has got a few little bits typically that you can move. In this case, it's got a set of adjustable saddles there like this. Why might we need to do this? Well, it's because of this. When you play a note, an open note, the note you hear is determined by the weight of the string, so the weight per unit length of the string, which we typically think of in terms of string gauge. It is determined by the length of the string at the point where we're playing it. So if we're playing an open string, it's a certain length. If we fret it, we make the string shorter and the pitch goes up. And it is set by the tension of the string, which we adjust with these little things up here. The frets are in a fixed position. And what we really want is, if that is an E, oops, slightly flat E, if that's an E like that, then we want the note here to be an E an octave higher, and we want that to be an A and a B and a C, and so on and so forth. The trouble is that, being awkward fiddly gits that guitar players tend to be, we go and we put strings that we like on the guitars, and they're not always the same. And what you tend to find is that if you have a guitar that's set up for light strings and then you put heavier strings on it, that you will find that you're going out of tune as you play up the neck. Likewise, if you set your guitar up for heavy strings, you put light strings on it, you find that you're going out of tune as you go up the neck. So intonation is the adjustment that we make to try to allow for that. And in the general case, what we're going to do is we're going to put a fresh set of strings in, we're going to break them in, we're going to have all the other bits done because intonation is messed up by just about everything that we've talked about in the setup so far. So you want to get your neck relief sorted out, you want to get your action sorted out properly, you want to get your strings on properly, get them broken in, tune the guitar, and then you want to hold it in the orientation that you play it, because we've seen before, if you actually play a note and then just do that with your guitar, you can hear it going sharp as the force of gravity pulls the end of the guitar neck down. So it's all a little bit sort of delicate and tenuous. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we need to get sorted out the basic setup stuff that we've looked at previously. So get the neck relief done, get the action the way you like it, get a nice fresh set of strings of your gauge on, get them tuned up, get them stretched out, played in but not worn out, get the guitar basically set up to the best of your ability as you will be playing it. And then all we're going to do, and it's really quite simple, is we're going to play the note, which is the harmonic at the 12th fret. And that should be, and just turn that tuner on. There we go. So that note should be an E, and then we're going to fret that note and play it, and that should settle down to being an E. The nature of guitar playing is that when we fret a note, we kind of take all the precision out of it. I can play this note here, and if you look at the tuner, by pressing into it, I can make it go all over the place just with finger pressure. Some people will do the harmonic and the open string. Others will do the fretted note. The Gibson website recommends the 12th fret. It seems to work pretty well. Guitars that are intonated this way seem to play pretty favourably in tune over most of the neck. I have known people who do this at the 5th fret. If you play a lot down the bottom end of the neck, you might care more about getting your intonation spot on down there. Accept the fact that you're never going to get a guitar to be perfectly in tune. The moment you start fretting things, you take so much of the precision out of this. So don't go down a rabbit hole of worrying too much about this, but that's the basic concept. Tap the harmonic, which you get just by touching the string over the fret, and then the fretted note, and go on, settle down. There you go. Oh, yeah, no, yeah. You get those the same, and you're good to go. One of the things you may have noticed there is that when I play the note, it starts off and it goes sharp, and then it kind of settles down. And again, that's because the excitation of the strings, it's stretching about, as I say, not a precise sing. So what do you do if it's not the same? Well, here's the simple rule. You adjust the saddles down here, and the rule is that if the fretted note is flat, you go forward. So all the Fs, if the fretted note is flat, go forward with the saddle. In doing that, you make the string a little bit shorter, and shorter strings have a higher pitch to them. So that's the rule. Fretted note flat, go forward, and if the fretted note is sharp, then go backward with your saddle. A couple of things to be aware of. This guitar, as most do, has got a straight nut on it. You do get some guitars which use a sweetened tuning, think something like the Buzz Fighten, I think it's pronounced Fighten tuning system. And if you look at the nut on those guitars, it's got little steps in it. You need to look at the specific instructions for how to intonate those guitars. And you also get some which, instead of having straight frets going across, they actually have frets with deviations in them to sweeten and correct tuning for sort of playing in pure keys. Again, you need to be careful if you've got something like that, and you need to check the instructions for it. But the same principles that we're looking at here apply for fun frets or straight frets. Fun frets, if you don't know, I just swear, you have a longer scale length for the lower strings. It enables you to get a bit more tension in, stop the strings going floppy all over the place. And that's the basics of it. So how do we actually get down to detail to make that adjustment? Let's have a look. So here we are once again at the bridge end of the Les Paul, and we've got the tailpiece, we've got the bridge, as you can see, and the bits that we're going to be looking at today are these. These are the saddles. These are the things that define where the end of the string comes. So the things to be aware of, to notice here, is that you've got the screw heads, and those screw heads turn these screws here, which wind these saddles backwards and forwards in the slot. This bridge has got the screw heads pointing backwards, which is quite convenient. You sometimes find these bridges are kind of put on the other way around, so that those screw heads there are on this side. The other thing to notice is if you look at these saddles, if we kind of get that one from the side, yeah, there we go, you can see that this is vertical, flat, and then it slopes down. And what we really want to do is ideally, we would like to have the string coming off the flat face so that you've got a clean break point, and then the slope simply gets it out of the way of the string going back down to the tailpiece. Sometimes you are going to struggle to get enough movement. You've only got a fairly small slot there, and depending on the accuracy of the bridge placement and depending on how far off the norm the strings that you're using are, you might find that you actually run out of movement. So you will sometimes find that, let's have a look here. So you see this one is flat to the front, flat to the front, flat to the front. These are all flat to the front. On some guitars, on mine, you find that some of them are flat to the front, and some of them have got these pieces twisted round, the individual saddle pieces. And the reason for that is that, well, you can see there where the thickness of that saddle is. If you're moving it towards the back of the bridge and you run out of space, by flipping it round, you can get a few extra millimeters of travel. So that's not too uncommon to see. Don't worry about it. It works perfectly. It's just one of those funny odd little things. The other thing that is really strange is that if you have, say, a Gibson, and you've got it set up and you have it tuned with a particular brand and weight of string on it, and then you look at the next one along for a perfectly tuned and intonated guitar, you'll find out that these saddles are in completely different places. So we're going to have a little look at what we need to do to adjust these now. And what we do is we're going to start off and we are going to lower the tension of the string, and we just do that so that when you are moving this saddle backwards and forward, these strings have got windings on them, and those windings can snag. So if you leave the tension on and then you drag this backwards or forwards, you can end up dragging the string with it and undoing all the good work that you're trying to do. And then, having determined which way you want to go, all we're going to do is get our screwdriver bit on there and then turn and adjust. So the bad thing is you've got to do that for each string, and then each string done, you've got to tune it, you've got to check it, slacken it, do it again. The good thing is it doesn't take a million times to get it right. And honestly, the tuning and intonation on guitars is so imperfect anyway that it's probably not worth winding yourself into a frenzy over. Okay, a couple of different things to look at. I don't have one here, but some guitars, instead of having the separate tailpiece and bridge, you get something where you've got a tailpiece and it's got, you'll generally find it's got lines cast into the top of it. So the string would go round and over the top of the bridge, and then you just simply wind one end or the other of the bridge forward and backwards to get your intonation as close as you can get it. It's basically get it close and then get on, hey, it's rock and roll. On the Strat, the exact same principle. You've got a set of really easy to get to screws here, and slacken off, wind backwards and forwards to adjust. Your limiting factor here is going to be the back of the trem and the size of the spring that goes in there. And you can see that the lower couple of strings on this one are kind of pushed all the way back. In fact, I probably had to trim a couple of coils off of those springs to get them to fit in there. So there you go, Strat, the exact same principle. I'm just going to throw this one out here because whilst this is a Strat type guitar, this is my Fret King with a Wilkinson Bridge on it, you can see that you don't have the same setup at the back. You've got a set of holes in here, but they are not screws, and you've got a set of screws in there under the hollow saddles. So this is really fiddly to do because you've got to loosen that screw and then slide these backwards and forwards. If you have a Wilkinson Bridge and you are doing intonation yourself for the first time, have a look in the box that your guitar came in. You should get a specialist little tool on it which clamps the thing and makes adjusting really quite easy. And we couldn't do something like this without covering the good old beloved Tele setup. So this is a vintage style bridge. It's got 3 saddles in it, quite a crude adjustment. The screws go through the back plate, threaded through the brass rods there. On some of these you will find that these rods actually slope, and they're done that way to compensate for the fact that you've only got 1 saddle per pair of strings. It's a compromise setup. I looked at getting a set of those one time, and when I checked the intonation on this, it was so close to being absolutely bang on with the standard saddles that I just left it be. But, you know, it's one of those things, if you want to play a vintage style Tele, you just have to get used to this stuff. Same principles apply, of course. Okay, and here's the good old Jackson Floyd. So these are a little bit on the fiddly side. You have a set of screws down here, machine screws, which hold the saddles in place. And with the tension off the strings, you simply have to move this whole assembly forwards and backwards. It looks as though it's got sets of adjusters on here, but these are for fine-tuning and for locking the saddles in place on this one. On a more traditional Floyd, you have a set of fine-tuners along here, but you still have the usually hex key driven machine screws going in the back, which you use for clamping. And the adjustment, you simply have to, I've seen it put as micro nudge it, and basically you just have to push it with your finger or a suitable tool. And there you go. It's not that difficult, but it is dead fiddly. And of course, what's going to happen is that you do all of this, you set your guitar up so it plays absolutely beautifully in tune when you're sitting here delicately playing notes like that on it. And then you put it on a strap that hangs your guitar down around your knees. You get your power grip on the thing as you're playing, or even better, as you're playing your low power chords. And instead of stroking the string like that, you're going, and the whole thing's rattling and going out of tune all over the place. The reason that I mention this is just this. You can get so caught up. I've seen people who claim that you cannot set the intonation on a guitar unless you've got a tuner that's accurate to 1,000th of a cent or something like that. Your guitar is never going to be as accurate as even a fairly inaccurate tuner. You can ruin your life by overstressing about this stuff. Set it up, give it somewhere near, and then just get on and enjoy. Okay, as always, I hope this stuff is useful to you. If it is, maybe think about giving us a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button so you get notified when new content comes out. I'll see you next time. Look after yourselves. I'm Andy Picker. Bye for now.